absolutely killer.
That's weird, that fuzz, or whatever it is you kick in there.
I just turned it on.
When he kicked it in, I just went...
It just goes, it kind of goes, goes to like mush almost, doesn't it?
Martin, it is a great pleasure to hear you play the guitar and wail like a hero.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind. Thank you.
So cool, man. So cool.
Yeah.
Nice to hear humbucker in a Strat too. I'm used to single coils, and that is a throaty thing. What's in there?
I think they're called twin head humbuckers, and they're just standard Fender jobbies.
It's a beast.
It's a beast. Yeah.
Okay, Victory VC35. Victory have asked me to come and do this video with Martin, which I'm delighted to do. So first question, Martin, what is VC35 and why VC35?
Why is because a lot of people would email or come up to me at shows and say, what's the closest thing you make to another amplifier?
That particular British classic amplifier from the late 1950s.
That sort of thing, yes, with 4 EL84s in it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we don't make one. I wanted to do something a little bit different because that's what I like to do rather than just pinch someone else's idea and make that.
Yeah.
So we've gone with an NOS, new old stock Mullard valve in the preamp just to add something different to help drive the tone stack.
But it's not a 12AX7, is it? Or a 12AY7 or a 12AU7? It's a different kind of valve.
EF184. It actually drives the tone stack, so it's.
And does the tone stack come after the gain section or before the gain section? How does that work? Or is it in between?
Kind of the last. So it's the last thing in the preamp section before it's got an effects loop. So it's just before the effects. Well, just before the tone stack, and then comes the effects send and effects return, and then onto the phase splitter. But
it's not, just to confirm that, it's not doing the same job as like an EF86 would in a vintage Vox or in a Matchless or something like that.
No, it's not doing that.
It's doing a different job.
No, there's much as I like those things, and and these sound great for that use, they're too microphonic.
For all those people who would go, oh no, why don't you just use standard valves because I can't buy EF184s if I need to replace it. A little birdie tells me Victory has a load.
We have a load. We made sure we did, but I wouldn't include that in a design if I could only get 6, or 100. We've literally thousands, so it won't be a problem.
And as a valve itself, you're happy that it's robust?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yeah, because it's one of those valves that was developed for military purposes, not necessarily audio.
Right.
And as we know, when certain organisations in this world want something good, they'll pay to make sure that it's good.
So not only can you use it in your amp, you can also use it to drive your tank, right?
That's it, yeah. If you've got one. I haven't, not these days.
Mine's up on blocks here. No. If I think about that classic British amp from the 60s, Vox, right? Let's say it out loud, because we should.
Out there now. Yes, and it deserves to be.
I'm thinking big chimey cleans. I'm thinking that sound.
Yeah.
So I happen to have a Fender Strat here. A little bit of reverb.
Splash.
Lovely and clean.
Yes.
A little bit more reverb. I'm going to knock the bass off a little bit.
Okay.
Give it a bit more chime. Chime is the operative word, isn't it?
It is. Nice.
Bit of help from a Echo Rec type delay from the Boss DD200 there. So that's, I mean, it's loud, it's clean, it's what you would expect.
And that is the idea behind it, yeah.
Why the bass cut? Just out of interest, the bass cut function.
There's certain type of amplifier, the Vox, shall we say. Some of the sounds I remember from those is actually quite light in the bass.
Yeah.
And so as people are looking at an EL84 output stage, they might like to have the sort of lighter bass.
Yeah, and then also, of course, when you push the amp, you get less overdrive, and it just gives you a bit more headroom with a bit more bass cut.
Yeah,
maybe.
But when it is quite overdriven, it's tighter and tidier.
We shall get to that in a moment.
Do
you know what? You know, as a point of opinion, I think it's okay. I mean, Victory might not necessarily agree with this, but I think it's okay to get out and say, yeah, of course it's inspired by Vox. You know, it's one of the best amps ever made and one of the most influential. And if it was just a straight clone, then for sure a manufacturer might want to be a bit more cagey about the inspiration.
Yes,
but
indeed, yeah.
I mean, as we'll hear, it just goes so far beyond what you would expect of that particular amp.
Yes.
I don't know. I think it's different enough to not be.
Yeah, that's it. I don't see, if you're going to make a clone, people will, you know, they will say the original is always best, so they'll go for that. So I always think it's a pointless exercise perhaps to just clone something, and I'd rather do something that encompasses that sound but is arguably more versatile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get into it then. So let's hear that bass cut. And what I love about that is you can just start to hear it get into a bit of overdrive.
Yes.
So we're still pretty low on the gain control there, but if we then push it round.
Very nice.
It's like if you were talking straight AC30 by that point, that would be a lot wirier. It would sound great, would be a cool thing, but that is different. It has that bottom end weight in, even though we've got the bass cut switch off. And then, of course, we can start pushing even more.
It's now going into somewhere else, isn't it? I think, to my ears.
So what should we do now that it's going somewhere else?
I don't know now.
I think something else. We've got also Rabea Massaad is going to be joining us because I want to hear him play it too. But let's grab some humbuckers a sec. What about this Gretsch?
I haven't had this plugged in yet, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I've never plugged it into this amp, so this will be a new experience.
Yes.
bit less reverb, bit less gain for the time being. Let's just do that. And then what you're saying is this, yeah? Push the middle.
Yeah, and we've
Bit more gain.
Got something else to experiment with at some point.
Oh, yeah, so we
Very
have.
soon.
Maybe you'd like to flick that on.
Yes.
Quite a lot of gain then.
There's quite a lot available there, and tone settings will affect that too.
Yeah.
And the mid boost on there is actually more controlled by the treble settings than by the mid-range control.
Oh, really? So if
it's a more upper mid. So if you set the treble higher with the mid boost, you'll appreciate. Yes, and probably
balance that with the tone.
Yes, absolutely. That's like an overall.
Let's try it and see where we get to.
Yeah.
Bass cut on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because presumably as you push that gain, you get looser bottom frequencies.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that. I'm just going to do that.
Yeah, do that then.
Almost gets fuzzy. There's nothing on here. I turned the delay off part of the way through that, but there's nothing else on. We're just maxed on the gain.
Yeah.
We've got the treble almost maxed out. Let's give it a bit even more.
Yeah.
Mids. Compressed, harmonic, easy feedback. It's loud in here, but it's not like crazy loud.
No.
So I would say feels kind of appropriate for modern stages.
Yes.
Where, because of course we've got master volume, where typical AC30, certainly non-master volume 1, almost entirely unusable these days.
Yes.
And doesn't sound anything, it doesn't have that kind of gain, so it's a different thing. So I think rockers can be pretty safe.
Yeah, because it can get more in your face, shall we say. That was quite a smooth sound dialed in, but it can be with some tweakage.
Yeah.
Become more gritty. And
I want to hear Rabea Plex. I want to hear what he'll do with it, because for me the natural place is to go to bluesy stuff, and the same kind of licks come out and it sort of sounds bluesy in the. I want to hear what he does with it and where he goes with it.
Yes, indeed.
We do that?
Yeah, should we do that? Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get Martin back in a minute. Here's welcome Rabea.
Hello.
Obviously, in many Victory videos, we've made many Victory videos together over the years. All right, so you were over there listening to that. What do you
with
think?
a face of pure, just unbelievable, like awesome sounds.
Because this isn't your thing, right? You wouldn't
No.
normally play something like this.
It's not the first kind of amp I would go to use when I'm thinking about the kind of sounds I play. But having heard what you were doing, definitely there's crossover there. Those chimey cleans, and I would definitely benefit from those kind of sounds, I think.
Let's hear you chimey cleaning then. See what you make of it from. So this guitar is tuned.
This is just down a half step.
Okay,
E
so it's just E flat. Okay, cool. Okay, so you, what I notice in your playing when you really dig, you've got quite the right hand. You like to bring out dynamic from the guitar. Where's that sitting gain-wise for you? Push a bit from there and see what happens? Or?
Yeah, I reckon if I start digging in, we'll probably notice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got the feel of it's really good. It's like, I don't know if it's the compression or whatever kind of word I can use to describe it, but it's not hard to do any of that stuff. And the cleaner the tone, for people like myself, I guess, that play with a lot of gain and like to play fast, that becomes harder the cleaner it gets.
Yeah.
But not with that.
So it feels, you can feel that.
It feels really easy.
It's often said, isn't it, that like an EL84 power section will give you that because there's a bit more compression in the way that it gives. But there is a fair bit of gain in the front end if we just give that a knock a sec.
All right. Oh, it's just great.
It's classic rock, isn't it?
It really is.
Because that's the one that I always forget about EL84 type amps is that through the ages they've been used by rockers, of course by Brian May, we know that. But even guys like Brian Adams and Keith Scott and Quo, of course, and all whether you like that kind of music or whether you don't like that kind of music, that the rock heritage and the tone is absolutely all there. Rory Gallagher, we should mention.
It's like it's a wide open kind of sound, but the feel of it is, like you say, it's got a bit of that compression from the L84s, but it sounds just like it barks at you in a really nice way, particularly when you've pushed the gain up like that.
There's one guitar that I haven't heard you play before. It's your 71 Les Paul Custom.
Yeah.
And I just would love to hear it through it.
Absolutely.
All right. So we're sort of back to where we were with it's an Esquire, isn't it? Not a Telly.
That's an Esquire,
Custom
double Esquire.
Yeah, okay. We're back to where we started with that. So let's hear the clean sound of the Les Paul.
That sounds incredible.
We clicked on a Boss DD200 digital delay and a Meris Mercury 7 reverb in the effects loop with the amp there.
That really does sound great.
It's chimey, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I know that's a word that gets used a lot for AC30 derivative amps. Not that I want to say this is a pure derivative, but we often use the word chime, and it is all there. And I actually don't think that exists anywhere else in the Victory range. It's one of the reasons I was excited about this amp, because it is a whole new voice. Incidentally, master tone cut. Just have a quick listen to this.
Whoa. That sounds so good.
And it's probably not the most enjoyable experience once you've heard it that loud, but check this out, the low power mode.
Wow.
I was just coming down with the gain a bit there. For anyone who doesn't get to play all that loud, all that often, start hearing that power section more compression, and like that. So I don't know if it's an amp you do a Toska gig with, right? Because it's not that thing.
I mean, it's the kind of thing that I'd seriously consider having an ABY.
Yeah.
I can take just for cleans, for that push clean thing, for sure, because it's that chime, even on a humbucker, and you can still hear that really wide, clean sound. That's really impressive.
Cool. I think we should get Martin back in.
You totally need to. Can I just have one quick go on the broadcaster thing with the fuzz sound?
Oh, yeah, okay. So on the floor, we've got a Hudson Broadcast, and it's there. We haven't used it. We used it in Martin's intro. We haven't used it apart from that. So the Broadcast is essentially a germanium preamp. This is essentially what it is. And it's got a cleaner side and a really dirtier side. But most important for an amp like this, it's got a bass cut.
Right.
Because if we take the bass cut back out again, there's a huge amount of low end, as you'll hear. Okay. So if you engage the red side of the Broadcast, so it's just full-on break-in germanium fuzz at that point, and it's absolutely killing
insane.
It. But, oh, mate.
I love it.
Sounds great to me.
Oh, yes.
A distant oh, yes. Cool.
Well, Martin, we've got you back just to say goodbye, I'm afraid.
Oh, that's all right. I don't mind.
I think we're all gonna have a play. Now, clearly, I've been listening to this amp ever since you had the idea, so we've been... Victory has a very kind of open door policy on the beta testing environment. So I'm lucky enough to be part of that team. Rabea will be, Pete Honore, and I have to say, Martin, when anyone says anything like, "Oh, I need it to sound more like spring flowers on a," I need it to sound like a yellow spring flower in a green meadow in Austria, you know what that means.
I would do my best to replicate that. That would be a stretch, but I would.
But I think that sort of that culture of feedback and people going, actually, yeah, I just need a bit more of this, or I need the reverb, a bit more depth, and it must be interesting from a designer's point of view when you have 3 or 4 people telling you that. You've got to condense that into one.
Yes, you've got to condense it, and you've got to somehow convert it into electronic terms, or not necessarily electronic terms in terms, the adjectives are fine, but it's then a case of how do I do that electronically? How do I interpret that chime? What does that mean? I know what it means with a bell, but what does it mean with a guitar? And so these kinds of things, they're the challenge for me. I think it's just somebody says, can you make it more this or that, and it needs to have more hair on it or whatever, and I don't really know what that means sometimes. But I'll get there in the end. But it's quite interesting the interpretation of what people of the feedback. But like you say, you can't have it all, so you have to condense it, so you kind of please as many people as you can.
So not all the people absolutely all of the time, which is
I do it.
Well, I'm glad you understand it. Cool. Okay, congrats.
Nice one.
I think it's got an interesting place in the market, this one.
I hope so. We don't do anything, well, we haven't done anything like that until now.
And it's very different from the Sheriff 22, which also has EL84s, but that's a completely different.
Yeah, it's quite different.
Fish.
Yeah, something like that. Again, whatever that is, a kettle of fish. I would it's an interesting point. I find it interesting. At least it's got the high and low power modes.
Yeah.
High power is a combination of fixed and cathode bias.
Okay, because the classic AC amps were cathode biased. Yeah.
And they EL84s in those kinds of amps these days do get punished.
Yeah.
And probably any amp techs, guitar techs working for people like Brian May or Brian Adams or whoever that are known for using these.
Or other Brians.
Or Brians that use an AC30, shall we say, knows that they're quite, they give the valves some stick, and I wanted to be more in control of that.
So that the thing is more stable?
Yeah, it just, you don't want the valves dissipating way more power than they should be, even when they're sitting there doing nothing. And so by that method of biasing for full power, that's the way to achieve it.
Yeah, but in low power it's cathode biased.
Yes, entirely, and that's hence part of the different feel and response, different sound perhaps. I don't know if that will come across on the tape, but
well, you can definitely fit. I mean, without a doubt, you go into that low power mode, and in the first instance, you hit it, and it doesn't necessarily feel that much quieter.
No.
But actually, as you keep hitting it, that compression is really evident.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's very much a feel thing, and I think people. Yes, it works in a volume situation. It is quieter, but I think, especially with today's stage volumes the way they are, the bigger differences feel and under the fingers is what I was feeling anyway. But.
Yes, you do. I mean, you might be hard pushed to hear from a recording the difference in sound. You might perceive a difference, but the real difference is in the feel and how the guitar feels in your hand when you're using the low power mode.
Okay, if you want to know more about the VC35, see some more pictures and all that kind of stuff, please head to victoryamps.com. So from Martin, from Rabea and from myself, we bid you adieu.
sick pedal.